Hey everybody, Capt Ron here, and welcoming you to another week and another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Back with our full complement, Diane Hansen, who's in the flight attendant corner, Eric Larson in the captain retired corner, Dieter in the chief technical officer and first officer corner, and me in the dunce corner. So welcome to the show tonight. We have another special guest of someone who's been with us for a while, and he was on before. I like to get people in the early stages and then catch them when they're doing something right. And John Calvert is that person, and he's been doing something right. He just got back from Europe. He's going to talk about his travels and his travels through Fearless Flight, keeping us updated along the way. We do want to make mention of the Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather group that we have, the private Facebook group. We're 1,300 plus and growing. I've got a lot of people out there. You know, another thing I want to make a mention for, I didn't make a slide of it tonight necessarily, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the book. I've been doing quite a bit of quite a few coaching calls lately, and I've been getting a lot of feedback from people in the book. And when Dieter and I put that together, accent on the Dieter, he was the driving force behind that. It's a monumental task, and it's a monumental task. But when we did that, we weren't going for a Pulitzer Prize, and I know we're safe from that. But what I really was pleased with is a lot of the feedback I'm getting was it is readable. And that's what people are feeding back to me. And we tried to keep it really at a level that would make sense and help people. And we made it so that you could pick it up, read a little bit, and put it down. And I'm not sure that the best way isn't to pick it up and read a little bit and put it down, because it's written so you could find an area of interest and then pursue it. And when we get some of the current projects we've got underway done, we're going to work on the revised edition in an audiobook. So,
and I just want to also say, Ron, because you mentioned that we're also hearing from some of you that our book is a travel companion to you, and that's part of what we really wanted for those of you who are more tactile and kinesthetic, to actually have that book in your carry-on, in your bag, and to literally hold on to. Now, obviously, we also have the app now, and a lot of our products and courses are on that app. But for those of you who enjoy holding a book, what we have heard from you is that when anxiety strikes on the plane, this is kind of like a go-to calming mechanism, just holding the book, not necessarily immediately reading, but just looking at the book, holding it, and then opening up to maybe a random chapter or whatever your ritual might be. But yeah, that's really a good way for the book.
You can use it to pray over too. Whatever.
It's a good security blanket, like Dieter said.
Yeah, security blanket. Yeah, and Dieter was especially instrumental in the size of the book, saying that we really wanted it to make sure that so you could fit it in your purse or in a briefcase or something like that. So we appreciate the feedback. And so if you haven't taken a look at it, go over there. I think we've got it on sale for $9.99 as opposed to
I'll put a link to the Amazon page.
So okay, so let's move into the special guest thing. I'm going to ask Don Calvert to come on board and welcome Don. Don's he's been kind of like a pen pal with us ever since he's gotten involved. I first recall seeing you making comments in the Birds of a Feather group, I think, Don, and I think I said, hey, you should consider a 50-minute coaching call or something like that. I mean, maybe that was not that, but that's my recollection of meeting you. And I really enjoyed talking with you, and so I'm just going to say welcome, and we'll just start with, you just got back on a flight. You even volunteered last week to be on the show, but that would have been like the middle of the night or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
over there.
Yeah. Well, and let me just say that it's really wonderful to see all of my friends here. You know, Ron, Dieter, you know, Diane, and Eric, but also the larger community. And yes, I think it was now 2 years ago, Ron, that I
Holy cow.
became involved with this
No
group.
wonder I'm about to turn another year older. Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah. And it's been I would say it's been very transformative, but let me get to the specific. Yes. So I work on, I live in the United States and near Washington, D.C., but I work on international economic issues, and I cover 3 countries, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And I traveled to those countries, and traveled to the Caribbean, and I've been to other places, but I'm a bit of I think a bit of an accidental flyer in some ways, because I'm an incredibly anxious person that battles a lot of anxiety, as I've been sort of honest about in my regular life. And I think that the flying, it becomes an area where a lot of things come together and ramp it up. But this group has been very helpful, and I'm happy to share in a couple specific ways how it's helped me to. I think I was getting on flights before the group, but I think now I'm having a much more normalized experience with the flying. And I kind of want to go further. I'm thinking about going to maybe Japan later this year, possibly, or at least go to Europe on vacation, not for work.
And normalized is one of the things that I talk with just about everybody when they come on, particularly for a 15-minute coaching session, because that's one of the things I think at the fundamental level for people who are afraid to fly. It's hard for the average person to do it enough to normalize it. You know, and you know, everybody says, well, you know, I feel safer in my car. You know, and of course you do, because you normalize those experiences. You can have a bad experience on the freeway, or avert a rear end with somebody like that. And most people just jump right back in the car. They don't need to seek out a fear of driving or fear of riding in a car, course anywhere, because they do normalize it by doing it so much. But flying is difficult, and the sights, the sounds, and sensations are unique in many cases to flying. So normalizing is a real problem. What would you attribute the success at normalizing your experience to?
So I would say there's 3 things, and one is E, C, and T. So E is education. Okay. One of the things that this group has been very important, I think this is true with any fearful flyer, that the fearful flyer first really needs to understand, and you can't do this enough, you have to learn to develop an understanding of the redundancies and the protocols, and the sheer magnitude of the system that has been put in place, with these with flying the system, but also specific planes. It's not on accident that you're safer getting on a plane than crossing paths with the friendly neighborhood dog that's on the sidewalk. You're more likely to get hurt or killed by that neighborhood dog than getting onto a flight.
I'm gonna add that to our list. I've never used that one, but we'll add that to the list now.
Yes, and it's not on accident. And I think you all have been very skillful with Diane, with your experience, and of course, Ron and Eric and Dieter with your hands-on experience. There is a system in place on why it's so incredibly safe. And I think that's one educational component that you cannot overestimate the importance of. I think the second thing which really drew me to this group is the community. There is a real support system here, not just with the core team, but with everybody that's in the larger group. And I know that we're developing as a group here more interactions outside of the Facebook and I'm excited to be part of that. But I think the webinars, I think the support, the texting, that's a really critical second component. So the first component, education. Second component is community. I would say the third component would be there's specific techniques and strategies that really are that I found very useful. And one is, it's really more of I think a strategies and approaches. One, you don't need to get over your anxiety. It's okay to fly anxious. If you try and get rid of it, and you get more anxious.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful about believing what is going on in your mind. So I think it's very essential to be aware that you're anxious in the thoughts, but also observing them as an impartial spectator and recognizing that the reality is simply not the same as what's going through your heads. And I can give you an example in a moment about these 2 last flights. I also think that you all have been really good about saying connect with people, connect with the wonderful. First of all, if you can, hug a flight attendant. Tell them they're doing a great job, because they are. And connect with them at the outset of the flight, during the flight. My best friends on these last 4 flights were flight attendants, and they felt honored that I shared with them I was an anxious flyer. They were there for me throughout the whole trip. And I think the last point is, you really have, at the end of the day, you've got to get on the plane. And I try to take a very meta 30,000 foot view, no pun intended, of this. And that is, do I want to live my life always in fear, or at least let fear driving what I want to do? Or do I want to do the things that I want to do and go to the places I want to go, even with the fear? And I'll take the latter. And that's been my approach. I've learned all of those from you all.
Don, that's almost a perfect user translation of Ron's deal that he says, you have to tell yourself, you have to learn how to tell yourself a different story.
Exactly.
Because otherwise the one that's in your mind, the bad one, will stay there.
Right.
You have to replace it with a better one. And you're saying it might not be perfect, but it'll be better.
Right. The very important thing, like you said, it may not be perfect. It might not be perfect for a while, but it's like Erickson, like you said, it's better. And to understand, okay, if you're anxious, embrace it, be part of that, and then move forward. But don't pretend, don't be an ostrich and pretend it's not there, because then you're never going to confront it and embrace it and learn from it and move forward from it.
When we had last week, when we had Glenn Carlson on board, who was a passenger on the Sully flight 1549, he made the point that stuff happens in life, and it's either you either get stopped up by it, or you just go on with your life, and it is what makes life interesting, but it's tough. You just have to keep it going. Were you more in the mechanical area when you're worried about the technical aspects of flying, Don, or were you more worried about like claustrophobia, anticipatory anxiety in that?
Yeah, I wasn't really, thank you. I wasn't really worried about the mechanical parts.
Yeah.
I think I was really worried more about my own worries, my own thermostat, my own anxieties. And I made certain assumptions. And this is very important that people need to understand. When you're anxious, we make certain negative sort of forecasting assumptions. Assumption 1 was, if I'm flying over the ocean, somehow that's scary or mysterious, or the plane's going to get lost. And honestly, it didn't really bother me that much that we were flying over the Atlantic, because you're over the Atlantic maybe 6 hours of the 8-hour flight. That actually surprised me that didn't bother me. I do think that I was sensitive to the turbulence that we had. We had maybe 2 hours going over, but in the scheme of things, it wasn't a big deal. We had a decent amount of turbulence in my mind coming back from Frankfurt, Germany, but nobody was really worried in the plane. And it was my thermostat that was really a little bit, you know, it was just overreactive, and I knew that, and it worked out okay.
So you got on board at 4:38 in the evening coming back? Is that what that's saying there on the slide? Can you see that?
Well, that was, thank you, Ron. That was, yes, it was, I think it was 4:38 Frankfurt time. And I believe that we landed in Washington local time. I think it was 5 or 6 p.m. I don't know if my math is correct, but it was about an 8.5 hour flight.
Right. And we're in the past, was flying over water an issue for you?
Yes. I was very spooked out by the idea that I'm over, large bodies of water. There's nothing they can do. But I think you all really were skillful. It might have been last year before this. I went to Germany back in November for a big work trip. And I think you all are very helpful in illustrating that there are protocols, that there's a 120-minute rule, that if you're over the Atlantic, they try to have you so that you can land. You're within 120 minutes. If something happens, you can find somewhere to land. I think it's a larger number for the Pacific Ocean, but that really anchored me because I could realize that you're never that far away from a landing zone if something happened, and stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, and Eric can talk a little bit about that, the 120 versus 180. The why we're gonna this month's monthly webinar on coaching live webinar on April 20th. We're going to talk specifically about long distances and flying over water and things like that, because that's one of the biggies for people. Because the average person just has no concept. Again, it goes back to what you said about education. If you don't understand, your brain will make something up. And if you don't have much knowledge, it's going to make something up that can be very preposterous. But flying extended periods of time, and not we talk about flying over water, but there's some pretty remote places on the earth that you don't want to fly over either, because there's nowhere to land there. And so you're right that the 120-minute rule is one that all airlines employ, or most of the time, to make sure that you never are more than 120 minutes away from a suitable alternate airport. And we get that way, or we were afforded that 120-minute rule because of technology, and particularly engine technology. Those suckers are like the Energizer Bunny. They just run and run and run. So I think I shared when I was coming back from Tel Aviv last summer, that I woke up right over the pole coming back over there, and the thing that struck me, I was right inboard of the left engine. And I looked out there, and those intakes are big enough to stand in on a triple. Well, this was a 787, and I was just in the moment, just really appreciated how that thing had been running for about 9 hours, and it had another 10 hours or 8 hours to go. And it's just really incredible how well maintained and technologically reliable those are. So,
Ron, I have my head down for a second because I never thought I'd be looking up 7.4 stats again. So I checked out what ETOP certification the 7.4 falls under. And the people that watch us know that that's the time limit you're allowed over water, over remote areas should an engine fail. The amount of time you're allowed to be from an alternate to divert. And the 747-800 has a 330-minute diversion.
Yeah.
5.5 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right. Yikes.
If you can afford the gas, that's great.
And ETOPS again, Eric, stands for
extended two-engine, you're messing with me now. Extended
twin engine. I'm gonna help you.
Thank you. Twin engine operations specifications. And we make a joke about it, so I have trouble producing that.
I know. That's why I asked you.
Generally, that came into being to fly for the purpose of flying two-engine airplanes long distance over water because they were so reliable. And that occurred, I think, in '86, and TWA got the first one. So I always think of it with a twin engine. And so I pulled it up on the Google here, said, well, if these, I'm making half a joke, if these guys can still afford to fuel an airplane with 4 engines, what kind of certification do they fall under on that? It's 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
That's a very long deviation time.
And prior to that time, we had the earlier versions of jets, the 720, Boeing 720s and Convaires and whatnot. Before that, it was propeller engines, and you could pretty much count on in the piston days when they had engines that like you would have under the hood of your car before all electric Tesla came along. And you could pretty much count on if you were going across the Atlantic, losing one engine on a reciprocating. They just were not that reliable with all the moving parts and stuff like that. I flew an old World War II developed engine in Vietnam for a year, and we had we have 250-gallon drums in the back. We would just pump 5 gallons of oil in there per hour because that's what the consumption was. I was just blown away. Fortunately, I got back in the jets, and it was just a lot easier to do. So anyway,
I flew. The first time I flew along was February of 1969 from JFK through Iceland to Luxembourg on Icelandic Air and I don't remember the aircraft, but all I remember is it had 4 engines with
propellers. Oh yeah. And the sync problems and all that. So any final words of wisdom or anything, Don, for anybody out there, that beyond what you said?
Well, I would say thank you. One thing is, I know I've said this before, and I'll say this again. If someone with my universe and magnitude of pretty dominant anxiety, stateside, can put himself onto a plane and have a good flight, even while he's anxious and has these other things going on, and can manage that and get to the other side and have a good visit to the palaces in Austria, and I went to a 500-year-old restaurant in Germany. If I can do that, I think that anybody in this community can do it. But I really want to give the credit back to you all, and like I said, the education I talked about, the community, and then the techniques. Those 3 things I think are really powerful, and I just want to give back to this community that you all have created.
Well, thanks. And my retort is don't blame us for your success. So seriously, thanks a lot. We really appreciate that. And it is a two-way street. We really appreciate the fact that how much you've worked on it. You gotta stay committed. The worst thing you can do, best thing you can do is buy a ticket. Worst thing you can do is not get on the airplane. And tonight, as we speak, I don't know if she's on. She'll probably put a note in here. She is. Marcia Schaefer has been one of the folks that I've worked with a lot recently, and another person like Don really, really has worked her butt off. And she's in Barcelona as we speak. And like Don volunteered to be on last week, and we said we're going to give you a break because it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, if I remember right, when I was over there. And same thing for Marcia.
Marsha's wiser.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, and Marcia promised that she would come on and talk about her experiences too. But it's why I got hooked on this. Just watching the gratification that people have from overcoming that. It's I've had so many people say, I got this bucket list, and the last thing on there was overcoming my fear of flying. And one of the people that comes to mind is now my good friend Michael Friedman, and he just invited me again to go. He has this thing about seeing the running of the bulls. So we're going to see the running of the bulls in July of this year. And I told him I'm not going to run. And of course, the joke is you don't have to outrun the bull; you just got to outrun the people running with you. So and I don't think I could do that at this stage. So,
Ron, do you think your friend wants to get in and run? Will he be overcome by the moment?
Negative. But and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But one of the things I heard is when the people get down there and run, some of them try to run to the fence alongside and get over it, and the people actually push them back into the back. So anyway, so I have some stories that happens in July, and I'm really excited about doing that. So anyway, but thanks again, Don. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about that, and sharing your stuff. And for any of you out there, I'm sure Don would welcome any conversations through the Facebook group and whatnot about, things that you might be concerned about, that he can do that. That's the beauty of the group, is you get people and other perspectives. You don't have to take it from us. You can listen to other people and see what other people are doing, and what's worked and what didn't work for them. So thanks again, Don.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Also, props from Joni for Don, because I guess Joni challenges flying over water as well. And so I'm just going to throw this out again, that on April 20th at 6:30 Pacific, we have our monthly live group coaching webinar. And this month's topic is exactly that. It's flying over water or over areas where seemingly there's no place to land. And so the question that Joni was asking was, and maybe Eric, you can answer that. Are you aware if and when the last time a plane had to divert flying over the Atlantic Ocean, either to Europe or from Europe? Because I guess she's gonna fly to Europe in the summer, and so it's a great question. I'm honestly not really aware of any diversions in the last 4 years.
It happened.
I could say,
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
whether and this is a thing, everybody's worried about whether you're going to have to divert to an alternate airfield rather than go forward to your destination. But there was that United had 2 777 engines. Remember that? The second one got the most recent press. They took off out of Denver, and they had a catastrophic failure and ended up going back into Denver. But about 2 years before that, there was a United airplane going from West Coast, I think San Francisco, to Maui, and or Honolulu. I'm sorry, Honolulu. Yep. And they had another catastrophic engine. And for all of you who are now going to worry about flying the 777, that was on engines that had hollow blades in the turbine section, and there were only 2 airlines. United had a few 777s, and there was another airline that had them, but there were only a few planes, and I think they've either rectified that or they've replaced the engines on those. But anyway, so that was the last technical divert on an overwater flight, and it was going into Hawaii, and they ended up landing at their destination because they were closer to the destination. But
and how long ago was that, Ron?
Oh, well, that was about 3-4 years ago now. God, at my age, if I think it was a year, it was like 10 years or something like that.
That was a good guess, Ron. And then they were in rapid succession. I think you're right. It's in the 2 or 3. And any other turnback I ever heard of is because of passenger disturbances, not because something happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
Airplane was fine.
And we only used the 5-minute rule on those guys. 5 minutes, and we jettison them. Yeah. Through the special waste removal system on the airplane.
You can't open those emergency doors in flight.
Oh, I'm sorry, Diane.
No, I was just going to say there's sometimes we'd like to.
But Ron brought up an interesting point that some of you may have picked up on when he was talking about only certain airlines and these few engines, and you're going, well, don't they all have the same engines? And the answer is no. The airplane is designed to have X amount of thrust available, and Rolls-Royce or GE or other engine manufacturers may manufacture an engine that meets that thrust rating, and the airline can order the engines separately from the airplane, depending on which one they want to hang on it. So so that the airline has options on the power plants under the wings.
Yeah. So as the joke goes, oh, you want engines with that airplane. So But yeah, and they do, and the engines are obviously so critical and such a major part of the airplane that they maintain records for them separately. So you when you get on an airplane, if it's more than even a year old, you don't have, there's things that were no longer original equipment on that, and oftentimes it is the engines. But a 10-year-old airplane has got so many more different either new parts or overall parts that you would never believe, and that goes back to
The
what Don
carpeting is
mentioned.
probably the same. I'm just
What's
saying.
that?
I said the carpeting is probably the same.
Yeah.
And the flight attendants are probably the same. So, so all right. So
I love my job. I do.
right. So one of the things that really is worth mentioning again is the aspect about thinking about getting out in the when you're within a couple of minutes of takeoff or landing like that, and it really is a thing. You want to think about that. It's hard to imagine that you could even be just running down or going down the slide at the end of the runway and have to run across some gravel or something like that. You want to be able to move pretty well and having your shoes on. And the other thing, some of you, if you watched last week and you watched Glenn on here, you may recall Glenn talking about the fact that one of the kind of a moment of humor, they no more than hit the water and came to an abrupt stop. And everybody was reaching in their seat back in front of them to look at the emergency exit instructions, you know. So we talked.
Not helping.
Dieter mentioned the fact that we're going to on the 20th, we're going to talk about flying over water and all that. We're going to have Glenn has agreed. That's Glenn Carlson. He was in seat 6B on Sully U.S. Airways flight 1549, the Miracle on the Hudson. He's going to come back. And we're going to talk to him, in addition to the over water parts we're going to talk to him about considerations and why he isn't suffering from PTSD like some of the people. And he'll talk about some people who have had after effects. And we'll talk about that because I think that we're going to talk about how it relates to you all out there who maybe have anticipatory anxiety over worrying about something that hasn't happened to you yet. And we all decided that if there's anybody that has a right to be afraid to fly, it's Glenn Carlson, and he's not. So he probably has a lot to offer for us. So make sure you tune in on the 20th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So okay.
And I will just say that Glenn did take off his shoes.
He
and
did,
he
right.
did end up in the freezing water without his shoes. So, and I don't think he takes them off until the plane reaches 10,000. You know, where they level off.
Yeah.
But he
and
did.
he takes swimming fins with him now as well. So just in case. So anyway, all right. Thanks everybody. Thanks Diane. Thanks Eric. Thanks Dieter. And thanks most of all to Don. Thanks for sharing with us tonight. And a real thanks to all of you out there for watching us again. FearlessFlight Live. We'll see you again next week. Okay. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey guys.